Welcome, everyone, to the first EFMP Central Cell Community Forum for Families. Today's topic, everybody's favorite, Family Member Travel Screening, FMTS in 2023. Our speaker for today is going to be Ms. Tammy Hern, Chief of the Exceptional Assignments Programs Division, Headquarters Air Force Personnel Center, Joint Base San Antonio, Randolph, Texas. If you have specific questions regarding your family or a current case that you have going right now, we ask that you email all those questions to our workflow. Once again, thank you for joining us, and we're ready to go. Over to you, ma'am.
All right, awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone, or maybe good morning to some of you who may be overseas. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I'm very excited to bring an update on the Family Member Travel Screening Program and the things that we have to do as we process right through and transition to new locations. The Family Member Travel Screening was a big part of the initial EFMP transformation that we started 3 years ago. Making this travel screening process easier and faster for our families was absolutely at the top of our to-do list. So I'd love to give you an update. If you PCS'd last year, certainly that was a very difficult PCS. We had recently put the new family member travel screening process out on my vector, and there were definitely some delays. So for any families who moved last year, we absolutely acknowledge that that was a very difficult transition, but certainly we have things in a much different place this year. If you're PCSing this year, welcome to the new system, the new process, and we hope that most of you have already filled out your application if you're moving this summer. Summer moves are loaded, and we are actively working them. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get started. So this is our first community forum. We are excited to bring a series of topics to you. We felt that the Family Member Travel Screening update was definitely the first community forum to host as we are in the height of PCS season. So we'll get you up to speed on everything there. But future topics, we will hold these every month. EFMP transformation, we want to talk a lot about all of the other things that we've done, all the other initiatives and how we are working hard to really bring solid, comprehensive service to families at the installation level, right? We fully acknowledge that you truly experience EFMP at the base level, and there are a host of resources there. So we definitely want to get you in the know of all of those things. Of course, our next one is on behavioral health and mental health. It is very, very different for care in different countries. Right? We ask our families to serve across the globe and truly receiving behavioral and mental health care. Different countries have culture impacts, and so we'd love to have a conversation with families about that and learn more there. Autism support. I'll tell you the top 3 reasons that families are enrolled into EFMP are for behavioral mental health, autism support, and early developmental delays in children. So certainly a great topic for us to speak about, to learn about, for us to better understand some of the issues and challenges that you have as you navigate fit care for your family members. And finally, EFMP and Don't Want to Be. This is going to be a great roundtable discussion to talk about EFMP and why do we even have this program, and can I opt out? Why does Congress demand that I be enrolled? How do I get out of it once I'm in? It's impacting my career, right? There are so many things that we love to just get around the table and talk about, all those things that keep you concerned, right? We definitely want to debunk some myths. So again, we look forward to you tuning into all of our future topics, but we definitely plan to do this on a regular basis, and we'd love for you to be a part of the conversation. Feedback is critical. Again, please, in the chat, We'd love to hear from you for your questions. Again, I have a team of folks who can answer all of your questions. So this is the agenda for today. We're really going to look at the family member travel screening process flow, the timeline. How quick can you expect an answer back once you submit your application? We'll let you know how we were doing when we first started, but more importantly, how we're doing today. And if you're PCSing this summer, what that looks like. The Department of the Air Force considers a lot of things, right, when we are looking at a travel application. We look forward to being transparent and showing you all the different considerations that we make as we consider and look to approving or disapproving travel to that gaining location. Definitely, how can you help prepare your family for the next PCS with family member travel screening? We want to get you that answer back early so that you can make all the preparations for you and your family for transition. Your role, how you can help, right? In this process, there are several of us that have responsibilities in this process, but we'll walk through your role and kind of the ways you can, even in advance of PCS, make sure you have things lined up so when the PCS drops, you're actually ready for that FMTS travel screening, medical records are updated, all those important things happen, and you're not in a rush to do them once the assignment drops. And finally, when the Air Force is unable to send you to the location to which you've received as an assignment, we definitely want to talk about that disapproval process and what happens thereafter. All right, so let's look at the process. So this process map is a great view into what this looks like. I will tell you, prior to MyVector, so we rolled out the automated process for family member travel screening last August. Prior to August, everything was still paper, several forms, multi-page forms, and you have to start over every single time you PCS'd. With the new automated system, it has made it faster, it's made it easier, but more importantly, you and your family can do this together without a CAC, right? You can sit around the dinner table, you can sit on the couch and fill this information out. So again, we can make sure that you have care for your dependents at the gaining location. It all starts with that reassignment flowing, right? So when the assignment teams make assignments, if you are in a household with dependents, right? If the service member has any dependents, then of course they will be a part of the family member travel screening process. MyVector will automatically send a notice to you once that screener is loaded. That usually happens 8 days following the load of your assignment. Sometimes it can take up to 15 days. It really just depends on the update flow from MIL-PDS, our military personnel data system, over to MyVector. But once that assignment hits MyVector, the service member receives an email that explains that it's time to clear the family, right? So the member will fill out that initial travel screening, answering about 10 questions that kind of give us a vector as to whether if more screening is needed or not. If you look at the triangle, these are the times when more screening is required. So if a member answers yes to any of those questions in the initial screener, then we would definitely want more information so we can assess, right? If the family is already identified as EFMP, then of course we will need additional FMTS screening for them to make sure that specialist or any type of care they're receiving would be available at the gaining location. And finally, all dependents traveling with the active duty member to an OCONUS location, all dependents will be screened, right? So whether you're EFMP or not, the DODI, the law actually, and then the DODI expresses that all family members traveling OCONUS will have to be screened. Again, we want to do that check to make sure that there are any specialty requirements, whether that's medical or educational, that we've taken that into consideration and that we've looked at the gaining location to ensure that care is available there upon arrival. The FMTS application, I tell you, it's not as lengthy as it used to be because now you certainly have the help of automation, but there are certainly several blocks of information that we're going to ask about each family member, right? So again, going OCONUS, you're going to fill out this information on all of your dependents. If you're an EFMP family and you're moving CONUS, then you only have to fill out this information for the dependents that are identified as EFMP enrolled. But the family will take care of that, again, using their iPad, their home computer, no CAC required, out on the Family Vector website. That information, it's two-factor authentication, so it's definitely protected. It's just, of course, we'll use email in order to send you the code to do that. We ask that you do this within 30 days of getting your assignment, right? We need you to fill out all of that information. If you're going overseas, we're also going to ask that you provide a dental clearance and an educational clearance from your child's school, and attach that with the information you've given us within FMTS. This information is required only for OCONUS and is necessary for us to ensure that any dental services that could not be done prior to leaving, that there's a capability to do that, or education. If there's any type of special education needs, we want them identified so DODEA can make a decision as to whether they can support that child at the DODEA school. Once everything is done, right, those forms are signed, you're going to load them into MyVector, and you'll end up signing a release for records, so that way we can get any records from off-base healthcare providers. So the DHA model, right, that Defense Health Agency model, more and more, our dependents are being sent off-base to obtain their health care. So now several of our family members, right, have those additional healthcare records off base. Well, we have to marry those records back with the military healthcare record so we can make our assessment. So the family will sign a release, and once they submit their application to the losing special needs coordinator in the MTF, that special needs coordinator will assist in requesting those records and having the records sent to them, and they'll have your medical records updated. We have found that that can be very timely. So families, if you can help in that area, I know our SNCs would be very, very appreciative of that. Once the SNC has validated that all the information is included, you've updated and uploaded those documents for us, they've received all of the medical records, they're going to send that to the EFMP Central Cell here at the Personnel Center, so that way we can start the adjudication process. We triage each case and certainly look to see if it's a high needs case, maybe it's moderate needs, maybe it's no needs or low needs, right? So think about families traveling overseas. If the child or the spouse, if they're not seeing any type of specialist, they're only seeing their PCM annually, maybe the children are only seeing their pediatrician annually, they may not have any specialty needs. In those cases, right, we can put those on the fast track, send it to the gaining location, get their concurrence, and then move it on to a dependent travel approved, right? If there are any type of moderate or complex needs, then of course we're going to send that through our case builders, have a case file built with pertinent medical information based off of what you told us in your application and what we find within the medical records that support those particular conditions. So we're looking for things like frequency and the amount of care required, right? So our case builders will build a case file so that our physicians during their adjudication review have all of the information they need in order to make that assessment. Along with that case file, right, they also have access to information concerning what capabilities the gaining military treatment facility has, as well as availability of the TRICARE network. So they utilize all of that information to make their initial determination of travel approval or travel disapproval. Once we document that original decision, right, it flows to the gaining base because we want the gaining base to absolutely give that boots on ground view into what's happening there. Most of the time, I will tell you, there is a lot of communication and coordination between these two, especially when care, we need an additional assessment as to where care is available. So truly the gaining SNC and SGH can tell us. Maybe we see that that endocrinology is not a problem at all, but the gaining base says, oh, our endocrinologist just got hit for a deployment and is leaving in 60 days. We will not have that service, right? That's something that we may not see right away. So that's why these two entities communicate, and we stay in touch to make sure that we know what's happening on the ground at each of our locations. Once the gaining SNC and SGH reviews what we say, then they get to concur or non-concur, and then it flows back to the central cell, and our physicians, they are the final adjudication authority. Their decision is what sticks, right? To help all of these team members, right, we have some TRICARE experts here within the central cell who also help us with assessing TRICARE availability within markets. Certainly a task beyond what we ever thought it would be, but certainly having those experts in-house help us to determine that. Now, if everything's a go, right, we all agree and the final determination is that care is available for the family, then of course dependent travel approved will occur. The member will receive an email with that determination, and then of course the MPF will be able to do any orders processing. What's great is there is a dashboard for you as a member within MyVector, so you can track your package, but the MPF and the special needs coordinator, the MTF, also have dashboards, so everyone can see what's happening within that case. Now, in the instances that we deem that care is not available for one of the dependents, then of course the family is not approved for travel, and our assignment navigator team comes in to be able to help the family to discern what is next for them. Dependent travel not approved statistics, I do have some slides later on in the brief, so we'll dig in a lot deeper into the dependent disapproval process in just a little bit. Down here, timeline, how fast should we be doing this? How long does each one of these stakeholders have to consider my package and move it forward to the next queue? So families, 30 days. 30 days from the time that you receive your notice of assignment, that's your timeline, that's your target to get everything done. Fill out that application, make the dental appointment, go by the school and drop off the form and have them fill out the pertinent information, sign your disclosure, and get it submitted to the losing SNC. We give you 30 days to do that. Coming out of COVID, I'll tell you 30 days was really needed because it was tough to get appointments. Another appointment you may have to make is, you know, if your family member hasn't had a physical in the past 2 years, you're going to need a current physical. So we give you that 30 days, but if you have everything ready to go, please send it forward to that losing SNC so we can get moving on the process. Do not send it incomplete, however, right? But if it's ready to go, please get it to your SNC as soon as possible. They have 10 days to review to get those records. We absolutely know that 10 days has not been a good target. Simply stated, we have, certainly it takes time to get copies of healthcare records from off-base entities. That seems to consume a lot of time. And then they also, if you send an incomplete package, then the SNC has to keep that package until you provide that documentation. There's no capability for the SNC to send it back to you for you to do whatever was maybe left off or maybe incomplete. So you would have to work with the losing SNC outside of the system and get them what they need so they can continue that package on. Within the central cell, if you have to go through the entire process, right, moderate to complex families, then our target is to move it in less than 30 days through the process. If you're fast track, right, if you have low or no needs, then you can expect that it only takes about 10 days. I do have timeline metrics that we'll go through, and we'll see how each one of these stages is doing. So we will share that here in just a few more slides. The gaining bases tend to move it very quickly. They have access to our case builder files, so they are able to see all of the medical data bookmarked and put together just as our physicians did. So that allows for a much quicker turn. Again, if it's dependent travel approved, you get that notice very quickly through the system. However, if dependent travel is not approved, then you'll spend the next 10 to 30 days, depending on what happens, discussing options. Again, if there's dependent travel not approved, the assignment navigator team will work with the family and we'll get a disposition of that case within the next 30 days. All right, so let's look at that timeliness. Let's look at how we're doing in each one of those stages. So the first slide I have up is to kind of give you a history, a little bit of a history lesson from the start of EFMP automation through MyVector and this family member travel screening process. So it rolled out in August of 21. January of 22 was when we really started to be able to get some data and really understand what was happening within the system. Things were moving slow at first, right? There were some technical things. There were definitely some airman behavior. We had folks who weren't submitting it in the first 30 days and they had had assignments for months and yet had not done their family member travel screening. In other words, we were all learning together, right? So the rollout was absolutely difficult. And again, if you moved last summer, you absolutely understand how tough it was. So this group of folks here, certainly it was a tough time to go through the family member travel screening process. As we garnered the data, right, as we learned more about the system and what was happening, certainly we made adjustments as quickly as possible, right? Enhancements through MyVector, the BAM tech team developers really worked hard with us to get things moving, fix those technical bugs, put some enhancements in like the fast track process. We brought across accelerated orders so that you could start getting your things in line before you got your travel approval. We also brought in some bridge manning. We brought in 3 physicians to help start adjudicating cases while we trained the 3 new physicians that just came on board and 2 nurses. So this manpower really got up to speed quickly, and thankfully, because come the summer, right, there were big numbers of folks moving. The Air Force moves the majority of their families during the summer, right? It's good for families. The mission it's a great time for all to happen. Naturally, you can see we certainly don't stop PCSs at the other times, but certainly that surge happens in the summer. We hired another physician and 2 additional nurses in June, and we hired 2 additional TRICARE specialists, again, helping us manage TRICARE availability and what the network can provide at these scanning locations. Super important part of the work that we do. By July, I will tell you all of the applications that had stacked up and the backlog was finally depleted. We released the 3 additional physicians that were helping us. They were able to go back to their full-time jobs. And we now were set with 12 physicians and 8 nurses to handle all of the family member travel screening process. They have absolutely kept a steady pace, and I'll show you the timelines of that. But you can just kind of see that now we are now in that upswing, right? The summer is upon us. The assignments are flowing, and so are FMTS applications. What's super important is that we manage, right, what's happening. I wanted to give you a better look, right, of what that looks like. So all of our open cases, we have a view into what queue they're in, how long they've been there, and then if there's any additional documentation that's required for that application to move forward. Right now, we're tracking almost 3,000 cases that report in the next 120 days, right? So RNLTDs are coming fast. We want families to have the most amount of time to prepare for their PCS, and family member travel decision is an important part of that transition processing. Right now, 77% of those applications are pending with the member or the local S&C at the losing base, right? So as they come to the central cell, right, we'll go through that process to get the actual adjudication process done. But right now we're waiting for thousands of applications to come our way. If you have an assignment now and you're in this category, right, get that work done, get it to your S&C so like that we can garner records, we can get that application to the central cell and get an answer back to you. Not only is getting an answer back quickly good for families, but it's also good for the mission, right? There is a unit at the gaining location waiting to welcome this family, and getting that family travel approval is certainly an important part of that so they know you're coming. How long is it taken in each queue, right? So I know how many are sitting in each of these particular queues, but what's the average timeline to which it's sitting there? So think about the member, right? So our members are doing, historically, each month we can track and see the average days it took for the member to submit their application to their losing S&C. So certainly expedience has been good, right? But what our S&Cs tell us, though, unfortunately, is many times expediency is not always best because it'll come to them without all of the information. So again, pay close attention to what's being asked within the system, attach your signed documents to your application, sign your disclosure so we can get medical records on your behalf, and then send that forward to your S&C. Other challenges with the S&C certainly is obtaining those medical records. And then of course, summer surge season is always going to present challenges, right? Because so many assignments are pending there for their action. So how can you help as a family? By all means, if you can help garner those medical records quicker, maybe you have a great rapport with your off-base physician. Maybe you have a portal that will allow you to pull them down and provide them. But work with your S&C and ask them how you can help move your application through to the process. Now, again, you can see the summer surge really starting to impact the number of days it's taken to process. So families right now are averaging 30 days to get us their application, right? That's way on the outside, right? That's right at the target. So we definitely look to get many of those applications here in the very near future, right? The S&Cs as well, 32 days. The target is 10. But again, we know the challenges they're facing, and we're working really hard to help overcome those challenges. One of the big things we're doing is in the MyVector process is when the family starts their application, we are going to ask the question there if you're seeing any off-base physicians and have you go ahead and fill that information. And then the system will send a notice to the losing S&C. So the losing S&C can start getting those records while you finish the rest of your application. That capability should happen within MyVector this fall. So we certainly have that going in the hopes that we can cut down that time frame that it's with the losing S&C. Once the central cell receives it, once it makes it to us, definitely wanted to show you the timeline of that. Again, movers last year, it took us almost 2 months to get that answer back to you. That was very difficult for our families. Once we got into that steady state, once we pushed out that backlog, we were able to cut it down to 27 days. And through other efficiencies and just moving out age cases, you can see that at a steady state, once it's received until the time we hand back that final determination to a family is averaging 14 days. So certainly get the application to us, and we look forward to moving that through. Now, we do expect our average rate's going to go up, right? We have almost 3,000 applications pending. So we will see an uptick, right? Just again, based on sheer volume, but certainly moving it to us ensures that we get that determination to you back as fast as possible. Our gaining locations are working very hard with us. They're in tune with us, and we're able to move that application in 14 days or less. So good news there. Why is it so important to the unit, right? So we talk about families need time to relocate. They need time to prepare, to sell homes, to prepare education plans for the next location, to do all of that research to ensure that they can integrate into that new community quickly. It's also helpful to get that determination quickly because of that gaining unit, right? The gaining unit has a mission. And if we deliver a disapproval, a travel disapproval to a family close to the RNLTD, then of course now that unit is having to make some shifts. They're having to now figure out how they're going to minimize the gap that's made by that disapproval, right? So let's look at the month of February, right? So you can definitely tell that we're trending up, but let me just take a few minutes to let you see the big difference, right? So 227 families came through the FMTS process. We adjudicated it in the month of February. 35 of those 227 were disapprovals, right? So we gave them a disapproval within 90 days of the RNLTD. There is no time for the assignment system to react and provide another family to fill that billet, right? 90 days is not enough time to give a new family to transition, right? So we give them at least 120 to 150 days, right? So these 35 units, right, at the gaining side had to make some sort of adjustment, right, to account for a gap in getting the next active duty service member into that position. So we want to keep these at a minimum, right? So again, we are on the right trajectory. SNCs are doing great to help us do that. Families, again, right now we're in the upswing of the surge, but get those applications in, and that way we can keep this trajectory going forward. You can see we're already slipping just a tad in March. We're all busier. There's a lot more applications, but we definitely want to keep that to a minimum. Protecting our mission, right? EFMP is a readiness issue. Certainly when we send a family that can get care at the gaining location, then certainly that service member is ready to perform the mission. Okay, considerations. So we've talked a lot about what that the Air Force wants to make sure that care is available at the gaining location, medical and educational, right? So how hard is this whole adjudication process, right? Can't you just look and see if there are some physicians available for my family? Team, it goes way beyond that, right? This is an assessment of care, not a call to see if there is a specialist who has available appointments. Know that here our physicians in the central cell and at the gaining location are looking at all of these factors, right? Diagnosis and prognosis certainly serve as a baseline. Medical history serves as well, right? Have there been any hospitalizations? What particular care may have had to be administered multiple times, right? So we're looking at that history. We're looking at the juncture of care. Is it a new condition? Is it a new diagnosis? Or is it a diagnosis that's been there a while, but we're starting a new treatment, right? So we're looking at the juncture of care and the stability of any type of care that that family member is getting. Can we continue that level of care at the gaining location, right? We don't want our family members to regress in care. Can we continue the same level of care at the gaining location? Are those specialists available? Or are there other conditions connected to the diagnosis that may become an issue, those comorbidities? What's the distance to care? How often is the family member receiving care, right? All of those serve as a baseline, a foundation for the adjudication decision. Now, add in, right? Now we're looking at the MTFs. What are the capabilities to care for our family members with those conditions? And what's available in the local TRICARE network. We're going to look at all of those entities because, again, we want to send families, right? Every family member starts as a green, and it's through this process that medical evidence brings us to a disapproval, right? So can the MTF help? Can the TRICARE network help? Those are, of course, our providers and who we look to. Now, there are many more considerations when the assignment is to OCONUS, right? We're going overseas to another country. Even other first world countries handle healthcare very, very differently, right? There is a cultural difference in how healthcare is given. So we must take into consideration those differences. Medications that our family members are on, is it available? Can they get it there at that overseas location? Is it legal in that country, right? So one common drug that is here in the United States that we use to service our families for dependents who have ADHD is Adderall. But there are many countries where Adderall is illegal. So certainly there are considerations based on the medications that your family members may be taking. Language and communication barriers. I'll tell you, there are times, right, when overseas the MTF is at capacity and our only ability to find care is through the TRICARE network. Well, think about if a child is receiving speech therapy, right? Language and communication barriers could absolutely be an issue in ensuring that that family member got the service that they needed. Also, if you're receiving mental health or behavioral health care, communication barriers can absolutely be prevalent, especially if a translator is needed for that particular provider. American medical standards of care are very high. Not all countries share the same level of medical care standards as we do here in the United States. So certainly we're always looking at that and considering the care and the health of that family member. Again, we want to continue that care, that continuity of care. And finally, special education, right? Just as we consider all things medical, all things educational are just as important, equally important to ensure that our DODEA school system can support our children that need special education care. We want to ensure that if they're on an individualized education plan, that the gaining location, that DODEA school, can provide comparable services to ensure that that child continues to thrive. So with all of that in mind, right, I want to show you how often we disapprove travel, right? So looking at the screen, you'll see that 10% or 9.9% of the time, we are not able to approve travel for a family based on the inaccessibility or the unavailability of care through the assessment, right, done by our physician team and the gaining location. That 10%, these are the most common reasons why we're not able to approve them. We can't find care for those family members who have mental or behavioral health care, autism support, and pediatric specialist. Now, again, there are many locations. 90% of all families are approved to the location that the Air Force is asking to send them to, right? But 10% of the time, we just can't match the care that is needed for those dependents. It doesn't mean that they can't maybe go to Ramstein in 2 years, right? The medical condition could stabilize, it could change, there could be healing. There are so many things that go into consideration. So just because a DTNA happens a year or 2 years ago doesn't mean that it won't be available to us in the future. But truly across the nation, across the globe, right, there are shortages in the exact things that you see on your screen. Mental health and behavioral health care, the supply is low, but the demand is very high. Autism support, the same. We find that ABA therapy and developmental pediatricians, it's tougher, right, to find availability in those particular specialties. Pediatric specialist is hit and miss, right? Some locations may certainly have a pediatric cardiologist, but they don't have peds gastro, right? So, but we see that pediatric specialty care certainly is one of the top reasons that we can't match a family to a particular assignment. I also gave you a view into some of the highest rates of DTNA and what locations those happen to. You'll notice that a lot of the bases are our rural CONUS locations, right? Cannon Air Force Base in Clovis, New Mexico, Minot, some AETC bases, right? Truly, Japan right now is also having a tough time with approval of care. The TRICARE network is very small in Japan. So we're having a difficult time matching some families to both Misawa and Kadena. So This just kind of gives you a look into some of the places where it is difficult to get families to. The good news is with all of the data we're able to collect in MyVector, this gives us great data for advocacy, right? Right now, I can give you the overarching reasons for our top denials, right? But I have more granular data coming that's going to be able to tell me at Cannon Air Force Base, these are the top 5 reasons we could not send families there, and will allow us to look at those specialties, looking at what the MTF can provide, looking at that TRICARE network, and then advocate for expansion of care, right? Data is certainly powerful. And so we look very forward over these next couple of months to even enhance this slide to be able to show what the challenges are in getting families to those particular locations, right? So if you're at Cannon Air Force Base and 1 in 3 families are disapproved, right? Your units are having to do a lot of adjusting, right? Making sure the mission is still met while we work to find reselects that next family who could come into Cannon and do that important mission. You know, it's an AFSOP mission, special ops, so certainly a very important mission. Laughlin, Altus, Vance, that's where we train pilots. Minot Air Force Base, right? Security and PRP. So very, very big missions at these locations. And so we want to help identify how we can expand care and bring our families into these locations. Once a family is disapproved, so again, well, let me make this one statement. So 10%, right, of our families were disapproved. Every member who gets a disapproval, a travel disapproval, has the opportunity to appeal that decision, right? Ask for a reconsideration and give us any additional information that they would like us to consider. About 60% of the time, the information you're providing to us is helping to get to a dependent travel approved. 40% of the time, it doesn't support, right? It doesn't get us to that level of being able to have care for that family. But I will tell you, one of the things I'm really working on now to analyze is how many of these appeals could we have actually gotten that information at the front end, right? Certainly disapprovals, they're hard. We don't like to adjudicate a disapproval. We hate when care is not available at that gaining location. But to put a family through an appeal and all that extra work, we want to figure out what's driving appeals. Is it truly new information? My dependent sees a cardiologist, and just 2 weeks ago, we had our follow-up. The cardiologist has released my dependent from the specialty care. No follow-up is needed. And they presented a letter that stated that, right? That's not anything we could have gotten back here because the appointment just happened 2 weeks before, right? So certainly there are times when new information is going to be the factor, and we could not have known that information back here. But truly, that's why we want to analyze and assess. Okay, so should your family be disapproved, certainly our Central Cell assignment navigators are a part of a team that help as we look to what's next. What are those next steps for your families? What does that disapproval mean as far as your assignment? Of course, the first things first, is the family going to apply for a reconsideration? Do they have additional information that they wish the adjudicators to consider and see if that can overturn that disapproval? If the reconsideration is requested, it's going to go, the member submits that to the losing SNC. The losing SNC sends it to the gaining SNC, who makes a recommendation, and then it comes to the Central Cell for that final determination. So much like the same process as the original. If the reconsideration is approved, then of course the decision is changed to a dependent travel approved. Almost 60% of the time is what the data is showing us right now. If the reconsideration is disapproved and we have to uphold that travel disapproval, right, then now the family is looking at what are the next option for them. Do they remain in place and simply request cancellation? Do they need to stay in place, right, and not move because Maybe there's a critical juncture of care. Remember, we talked about that continuity of care. If there's a new treatment or something that's happening that we need to keep them in place, and of course the assignment would be canceled, and we would code them in place for that medical action to take place. Or if you're in a must-move situation and your travel to the gaining location has been disapproved, then our assignment navigators are going to team with you and your assignment team, depending on where you fall, right? We will work with them to now figure out, okay, we need to now find a new assignment for the family. Of course, we ask our families to give us their preferences. What bases would you like to go to? Because if we can match a preference with an approval for travel, then of course we want to do that. Your assignment teams will always consider your assignment preferences, but of course they are going to put that mission in there as well. So if you ask for 5 locations and the mission they don't need you at those locations, or maybe your AFPC may no longer even be at that location, then of course they're going to look in that geographical area to see if there's something close to where you want to be. But truly, we work with families. Sometimes the mission, though, totally dictates that we send you somewhere that was not on your preference, right? We definitely want to get you to a location where your family can be supported. That is the most important thing. But anytime we can match a preference to where care is available, we are going to do that. The navigator, absolutely. Families have their contact information, can call them anytime. They will serve as that conduit for the family as we move to the next stage and find them a new assignment. What you see on the screen, of course, is just what Family Vector looks like as you're trying to navigate that. Your assignment navigator, again, all their information is there, and you will know who they are. So your role, how can you help, right? So I'm coming up on 47 minutes, so I'm going to go through this quickly because I definitely want to answer your questions. So just be active, right? If your application is sitting somewhere, as I stated, there is a dashboard, right? When you log into FMTS, it'll show what queue your application is in, who it's pending with, how long it's been there, and how long to expect it to be there, right? So it has those target timeframes. So if your application sits with the losing S&C more than 10 days, maybe you want to give them a call and see, do they need some help? Can you help get medical records, or can you help provide something that they're waiting for, right? So absolutely connect with them if your application is there. If your application is with the Central Cell and it's been here a while, more than 30 days, right? You want to inquire, and I'll let you know how you can inquire in just a few minutes. I'll have all that laid out on the screen. Complete your application as soon as possible, right? Go through the steps, fill in the information, be upfront, put it all in there, because I'll tell you, if you leave something out, certainly if we find it on the back end, then that means it's going to be delayed while we wait for that information to be uploaded. So be thorough. Make sure that your forms for dental and education are signed and uploaded, and get that to us within that 30-day timeline, and sooner if you can. Maintain those current medical records. You don't have to wait for an assignment to get your electronic healthcare record for the military updated. If you regularly see off-base physicians, maybe every 6 months or a year, you bring your records to the MTF and they can go ahead and get them loaded. So it's all there when an assignment does drop. If you have dependents who haven't received a physical in the last 24 months, that's going to be needed if you get an overseas assignment. During COVID, that was a real issue because we only went to the doctor right when we were sick. The whole get well physicals and such was not a normal part of our business based on the health concern. But now today, please make sure that physicals are updated and that we have access to that in your medical records for your dependents. Outstanding referrals is also something that we see often. If you're receiving care from your PCM and your PCM says, well, you've been dealing with that chronic back pain for a while, let me put a referral out to the orthopedic folks. But if you never go and that stays outstanding, we are going to need to know, does the member no longer need it? Did the member go see a specialist, but maybe they didn't send back the summarization of what that referral ended up being? So we have to close out all of those outstanding referrals. If anything changes, contact your S&C. We have a great force of special needs coordinators out there. And so if something is changing, if the health condition is changing once you've submitted your application, please, please, please keep them informed so like that they can elevate to us, especially if your application has moved to the central cell, right? Monitor your application and again, ask questions and offer to help. So here's those resources, right? At the base level, there are a multitude of resources to help families who are EFMP enrolled or for families who are going through the family member travel screening process. Never underestimate the power of your chain of command. Your first level supervisors, your first sergeant, your commander. I will tell you, last year when we were struggling with the backlog of applications, when we weren't able to give a lot of notice between the decision and the RNLTD, it was the chain of command who stepped up and found solutions. They worked with all of these base level entities to find solutions for families while they waited for their decision. Your special needs coordinator, your POC within that military treatment facility for family member travel, your family support coordinators. Every base has at least one family support coordinator at the Military and Family Readiness Center, and their sole job is to take care of EFMP families. They want to be the person that EFMP family reaches out to for all of their resource and referral needs. They also warm hand off those families to the gaining location, so the gaining location can start to prepare for the arrival of that family and have some local resources ready for them. Your MPF is who does all of your orders processing. They absolutely can see into MyVector and know where your application is and if it's been approved and if they can go ahead and annotate your orders as such. School liaison and the judge advocate, I will tell you, special education has been something that we've really worked to ramp up. We want to be able to provide that support to our families. Your school liaison is an excellent resource if your child is receiving any type of special education. And if you believe that your school district is not supporting what's in that individualized education plan, your local legal assistance attorney can help you. We have a special education specialist and attorney right here in the Central Cell who train our base level resources and equip them with what they need in order to help our families. Our legal assistance team will review your IEP with you and to hear your concerns. They will look to ensure that the school is doing everything they should be doing in conjunction with that legal IEP binding document, right? That agreement between the family and the school is just crucial to ensure that the services the children need is properly documented and performed. So be sure to utilize your special education folks on the base. How can you reach the Central Cell? Again, if your application is stuck, it hasn't moved and it's here in the Central Cell, right? The TFSC option 8, certainly give us a call and we're happy to help you know what's going on. The workflows are all listed here, right? You're able to contact us via workflow. And we're on social media. We have the official Air Force EFMP Facebook page where you can direct message questions to us. We monitor that every day and can get something back to you. I hope that most of you have seen DAF Family Vector, our website with all things FMTS and EFMP. It's a great resource for your family. And again, that's a location where you fill out your FMTS application. So no CAC required for any of that information or for filling out your FMTS application. So we hope that if you haven't, that you'll take a few minutes to go there and look. We also post all those metrics. So the metrics I showed you, we post our timeliness because again, we want to help manage your expectations. So like that, you know how quickly you can get your answer back if once you've submitted your application. Okay, so I will open it up to questions. I know that there are probably some questions in the chat. So let's open up the mic.
Ma'am, I'm gonna tell you, yes, this group did keep the chat busy.
Good,
And
good.
yes, our team, of course, kept busy, and they do have a couple questions that they gathered. Go ahead, team. Thank you.
Ms. Hern, the first question I'll ask is from Tony D. Ambrosio. He asked, there used to be a step where the medical review team would ask the family when more information was required. Why is this not done anymore?
So the previous, in the legacy process, right, the application went directly from the losing base to the gaining base. And so, yes, if through communication, the gaining base wanted additional information, that would be asked for. That process still remains here. So when we get an application here, if our adjudicators feel that information is not complete, or maybe there's a gap in a medical record, or they haven't seen a specialist in the last 6 months, but yet there's another note that shows that an appointment was kept, right? We look at all of those indicators, and if we see a gap in information or we need additional information to explain something, we will send that back through the losing SNC and ask for that. We also host family interviews as needed. Our physicians will, again, if there's a gap or maybe something that they really need some other information on, they can inquire about setting up a family interview with the losing SNC and the family. So we absolutely have that process in, but if they have all that they need to make their decision, then no additional information is requested.
Thank you, ma'am. And I know we are coming on time, so just one more from the medical, and any that weren't answered in the chat will definitely be placed on our Family Vector site, consolidated and placed on our site. So one more that was asked a couple times in the chat. This one came from Austin. He said, how involved should local EFMP offices be in guiding a member in responding to a DTNA determination? I asked because I recently had to do this and I'm waiting for a final decision, but my local office only told me, quote unquote, how to submit documents for reconsideration and would not elaborate on what content would be beneficial.
Yeah. So we as adjudicators, right, provide a summary of the disapproval, right? So what we try to do is really communicate through the system the reason for the denial. What specialty was not available for the family member, right? What service could we not access that caused that DTNA? So your special needs coordinator certainly is the one to help deliver that message to you. Now, a special needs coordinator may not be necessarily equipped to tell you what you would need to have it overturned. I'm not sure that they could define it that well for you, but what they can do is just make sure that you understand the reason for the disapproval and why we weren't able to confirm care for the family. Now, your SNC can absolutely reach out to the gaining location or can reach out here to the cell as well if they need additional information. Maybe they're not able to explain the disapproval clearly to you. They can absolutely reach back. We have an SNC support team, or they can reach out to the gaining location and have that conversation to better understand what all of the underlying issues were to best prepare that reconsideration. Your assignment navigator is also someone who can help connect you to either the losing SNC or the SNC support team to help identify that. Fully acknowledge that understanding the disapproval is the first step, right, to prepping a solid reconsideration package. Do we have any other questions?
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to give Miss or Master Sergeant Young my headphones, and she'll be asking some from the assignment side. Stand by.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. We have Charles, who's the NCIC Career Development. He said we filled a lot of questions regarding members are required to complete the ITSQ for dependents not traveling to the next duty location. Why is this mandatory if the dependent is not traveling?
So the very first question the member answers in that ITSQ. So remember, if the service member has any dependents, they have to go through this process, right? But in that initial questionnaire that the member receives, question number one is, are your family members traveling with you to the gaining location? If they answer yes, then it's going to bring them through the whole process. If the dependents are not traveling with them, if they mark no to that question, then of course the application stops. The family is now green on your dashboard at the MPF, and you'll be able to see that. And then you are cleared hot to get orders processing going. But that first question is the indicator as to whether they continue or not. So if they're not bringing their dependents, they need to make that known up front, and then it will stop the process.
Thank you, ma'am. Another question. Can base level assignments office get the chart dashboard like the MAJCOGs have? We have commanders that inquire about the status of their personnel overall.
Yes, absolutely, positively. So as a matter of fact, for personnel, the dashboard is on what's called Vault, V-A-U-L-T, and it is open to all A1 entities. So FSSs, you can absolutely garner that information. Team, if you'll write down that person's name, Ms. Hennington can reach out to share with them how to get access to Vault, but your FSS should absolutely know how to get access to Vault, because it has all kinds of personal dashboards on it. So definitely FSS, I love that you want access. We believe that it will absolutely allow you to answer many questions that come to you. So yeah, definitely we'll send it your way. But for all FSSs out there, anyone who's on your FSS commander, MPF commander should absolutely positively have those instructions to allow you to get access to that information.
Ms. Hern, Zachary Worse, he asked, why is each member of an EFMP enrolled family screened as if each member was enrolled in EFMP?
Yeah, the screening process is mandatory based on the DODI. All family members traveling to an overseas location must be screened regardless of EFMP affiliation, right? So every family member traveling to an overseas location with the service member will receive a full family member travel screening. And let me share why, right? So take, for instance, you have a family, your family's been sitting at base X, let's say Barksdale Air Force Base, Louisiana. So we've been in place at Barksdale for 4 years. Of course, we have received different types of care, healthcare through that time. And I'm seeing an off-base specialist who doesn't realize I should even be EFMP based on receiving services from them. So sometimes that information is just not given back to the PCM and then reported to the special needs coordinator. So we don't know that you even should be EFMP. So PCS screening, right? When we screen family members who are going overseas, again, we know that there are limitations overseas. So the law says assess if care is available, and if it's deemed not available, then the family is not reassigned there, right? The DODI also restates that, right, to say that if all family members traveling must be screened. So we do often find family members that maybe were not currently designated as the EFMP, but through this process we assess and they should have been EFMP. But more importantly, it is all about making sure that before we send you to an overseas location, we have looked at all of your dependents. Next question.
Thanks, ma'am. The next question we'll ask due to time restrictions is from Dan Weber. He asks, ma'am, can you shed some light on what data the central cell and the gaining locations, SNCs, etc., are using to determine if care exists in the local area? Is there a database? Mainly, or many I've spoken with who are enrolled in EFMP have a general impression that the inclination of the gaining base is to immediately deny and then put the onus on the EFMP family to do their own research on local care. Thank you.
Oh, what an excellent question, because I will tell you, sir, I certainly hear that in the chatter. I see it on social media quite often. But here, this is what happens in the central cell. In no way, shape, or form. What we love about centralizing the EFMP process is that we have a team of 12 doctors. They are not associated with any base. They work here for the Department of the Air Force to make assessments for travel approval, right? So there's no connection to, Ramstein. We have so many families, we don't, we're going to disapprove this one because we really don't want to service another complex family, right? Again, these are things I hear from other folks that myths that they believe to be true. So here within the central cell, when we receive an application, we look at the family members and all the things that you have submitted in the application. We pull up the MTF capabilities and the TRICARE capabilities, right? TRICARE, again, it's a struggle. That is a known struggle. We are working hard to find solutions to that particular issue. But that TRICARE network website tends to be outdated on a regular basis, right? And that, I'll even tell you why that is. That is in the TRICARE contract. If you are a TRICARE provider and you accept TRICARE, you are responsible for keeping your status updated on the TRICARE website. And unfortunately, providers or the office assistants of those providers don't always do a very good job of keeping that updated, whether they are taking new patients, whether they're still taking TRICARE. Many times that info is outdated. But here in the central cell, we're going to take all that information, look to see what the capabilities are, and make an initial determination. If there's a plethora of care, right, then of course we will send our recommendation of green. The family is green, they can go to the gaining location. If we believe that, you know what, based on the complexity of this care, we're looking at what's available at that gaining location and we can see it is not there, then we're going to recommend red or disapproval. Do not travel to the gaining base, because we can already see based on the service availability that care is not available. Or we may say, you know what, we've assessed it and we are marking this case yellow. We want to talk to the gaining base about their capabilities to see if we can get this family to green, to travel, right? So lots of communication between our bases on yellows and reds, right? We want to communicate, we want to know what's going on at that base. So there is not a propensity for people to automatically say no and leave it onto the member. What there is, though, is if there's any outstanding referrals or if there's any documentation that was not released to the adjudication team, the gaining location is going to really want that information, right, before they make an approval, right? So they may mark it red and say do not travel based on the fact that they need that additional information. And that's when that reconsideration process comes in, right? But we want to get all that information up front. So the best way to help those gaining locations and even us make the best adjudication decision is just to make sure that the medical records have all the information from your family members, and that will help. But truly, we absolutely look at every single DTNA, every denial. Our TRICARE team looks at those before we finalize red. They have also looked to see if care is available. So we want nothing more. Every case starts at green, right? Every case. It only moves to red when the medical or educational evidence proves that care is not available.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. If you want to go make any closing remarks, but we can go ahead and close it after you if you want.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for walking alongside of us in a journey that was really, really tough for families a year ago. We have worked very hard to make things better, but we're not done, right? This is a journey to make things better on all facets of the EFMP program. And we appreciate your attending today. We hope you'll attend some of our future webcasts, because again, your feedback is super important to how we move forward. Thank you for your service, and we will continue to work hard to improve our service to you.
Ma'am, thank you very much for everything. Everybody who's joining us and who is still on right now, what we're going to do is we're going to gather all of the questions that we were unfortunately unable to get to, and we're going to go ahead and answer them and put them on our DAF Family Vector. We just put that link in the chat. Please log into our DAF Family Vector so you can view all the answers to the questions. Thank you again for everyone for attending, and hope to see you in the next one.